Hey, hi. My name is Alexis Morvant. I am a pediatric hospice and palliative medicine pediatrician. I take care of children with serious illness at Stanford University in Palo Alto, California in the United States. I am the director of the pediatric palliative care program at Lucile Packard Hospital. And I teach at Stanford University, and I've been with Epic Peds now as a master facilitator since 2019. I feel very grateful to be here today to speak about my passion for professional self-care in the field of pediatric palliative care specifically. I've now run 2 pediatric palliative care programs, both one in New Orleans, Louisiana, with association with Tulane University and Louisiana State University. It was the first pediatric palliative care in the state of Louisiana, and then now I'm running the program at Stanford. And the one thing that is most important to me as a leader of pediatric palliative care teams is to ensure that every individual who joins my team that I have the honor of leading are able to reach their own highest potential as they show up as nurses, doctors, social workers, child life specialists, physical therapists, everyone who may be a part of a pediatric palliative care team. When we fly in the air, you hear from the flight attendants to put the oxygen on ourselves first before we start taking care of the other. I find that this is a very true philosophy, not only when we're flying in the air, but also when we're taking care of some of the sickest patients in the hospital and in the community. Because if we cannot show up to be our own best self, we're not fully showing up for that patient. And importantly, when we're building teams in pediatric palliative care, we want the individuals on our teams to stay in this work for a long period of time. I hope that every individual on my team, every clinician is able to experience joy as they're heading into the hospital to take care of kids on most days. And we have to be very intentional about creating an environment where our teams can thrive and not only nourish one another, but nourish the self. I think that we have an obligation to ensure that we are thinking about ways to take care of ourselves every day as we bear witness to some of the most traumatic and impossibly difficult moments that human beings will experience. We can't be in that space, in that environment, giving so much of ourselves, taking care of children and families facing serious illness, and not be intentional on how to continue to nourish ourselves, to be our whole selves as we do this work. And so some of the things that I do on my team is making sure that we reflect every week. So as a team, we'll sit on Fridays and we have lunch together in the United States and maybe in Czech Republic as well. Food is love, and so we eat lunch every single Friday and we share moments of gratitude as we reflect back on the week. What did we experience that we're grateful for as individuals? That is an evidence-based approach that says if we're able to think about 1 to 3 things that we're grateful for every day, it helps with our overall self-care, which will contribute to resiliency in the work that we do. The other one that we reflect together is meaningfulness. Everyone will share a moment of meaningfulness to remind us after this busy week, what were the things that really gave us joy? I also ask them to share a moment of personal impact. And this was the one that they have a tricky time doing, but they'll reflect back and share what was the one thing that they contributed to making potentially the suffering of a patient better, or maybe something that they did to support a colleague, or maybe something they did to support their own kid or husband or wife. Then the team vulnerably and safely opens up to share about barriers. What were some of the hardest parts of the week that potentially didn't allow us to experience meaningfulness and gratitude? And that might be that we collectively experienced the loss of a patient that we really loved and that we gave everything that we were capable of giving. And even though that is a part of the job, it never, ever, ever is easy. And so we might collectively pause at that time in order to take care of one another, to honor not only the patient and their story and their family, but importantly, honor the care that we were able to deliver. And then I make them reflect over food again. The fifth part is to look forward and share and be intentional about what are they going to do to nourish themselves through the weekend or next week. And that might be yoga. It might be that they have family in town and they're going to go to a concert. It might be that they're going on a trip. And those are the things that are really important for us to share so that we're being intentional to one another on the team to hold each other accountable for that. It's an expectation to nourish yourself. It's an expectation that you take care of yourself. There's an expectation that we create boundaries in order to continue to give ourselves within this work and not so much that we get burnt out. And so burnout is the thing that we talk about all the time in medicine, and it's a real problem. Burnout means that individuals in medicine, specifically in this case, are not able to experience joy in the work we do. Potentially, we don't even want to go to work. Potentially, we're leaving the work that has been so close to our hearts because we no longer have the energy, the love, and the passion to bear witness to these hard things. And I don't think people show up as either burnout or resilient. I think that there is a spectrum. And I've coined this little term called crispy. And I think every now and then we may have these little red flags, and I encourage our team and our learners to always think about what are the red flags that we may see when we're getting a little crispy, almost burnt out. For me, that might mean that I'm not laughing as much as I normally do. Maybe it might mean that I'm not having as much fun as I normally do. I'm typically not an irritable person, but if I start to get irritable, that's a red flag to me that says, Lexi, you need to stop and pause and redirect my energy to myself, inward. And that might mean leaving work at a normal time, maybe taking off some days to go on vacation, maybe asking someone for help to say, hey, we have all of these things to do this week. Would you mind taking on a few of these tasks? And vice versa. But it really is a moment to where we have to be cognizant so that when these things start to happen, we're aware so that we could do something about it. I oftentimes think about all the terms we sort of throw around in medicine when we think about resiliency and self-care, burnout. And I oftentimes talk about a bathtub. And the goal when we're doing this work is to keep the bathtub as full as possible. When our bathtubs are full of water, that means that we are experiencing joy most days on our way to work. It's fulfilling, and we are becoming our best selves over time. So the goal is to have your bathtub as full as possible. And when we turn on nozzles for water to come in, that's us being able to cope. So that's us coping and refilling the water. So for me, coping might mean that I am eating fried chicken because that's one of my favorite dishes in the whole world. It might mean that I watch mindless television. It might mean that I lean on a colleague at work and say, can we debrief this case? Coping is not something you do every day. It's a reactive behavior when we bear witness to something hard. And when those hard things happen, our bathtub, the water comes out of it. It goes down the drain. Our tanks are just not as filled as they should be or as they were. And when we turn the nozzle on with coping and we replenish that water, that's something that's reactive. However, when I think of self-care is making the stopper in the drain stronger so that we're more resilient, so that when the hard thing happens, our whole stopper doesn't go away and all the water goes down the drain and you find your bathtub empty. So you sort of have your self-care, and that's things like meditation, yoga, going to doctor's appointments, keeping our bodies healthy, going to therapy to keep our minds healthy. For some people, that might mean spirituality and some divine other that they may think about. Other things are journaling that I do. I use the app Headspace or Calm that might allow me to be reminded to do some mindfulness and some healthy breathing. It's working out. It's keeping the body healthy. So for me, self-care proactively means I'm doing Pilates 3 or 4 times a week. I'm going for a walk in nature for 10 minutes. All of these things are things you do every day to strengthen your stopper in your bathtub so that all your water does not just fall out. And the goal over time is to realize, hey, when we see hard things, when we bear witness to hard things, obviously it's going to impact us. It's what we do in the face of hard things that will allow us to ultimately sustain our careers to continue to show up to do this work. So self-care really is a core competency. It's a core skill set when any professional is going into the field of palliative care. And I think that that has to be number one for us to continue not only to bear witness to the suffering of children and do everything in our power to make it better, but we're also carrying other things like mitigating the stigma of palliative care to communities, that we're not just end of life, that we're here to do so many other things to optimize quality of life, mitigate suffering. Those sorts of approaches to advocate also takes up a lot of energy. We're misunderstood a lot. And so all that to say, we must put the oxygen on ourselves first. And self-care is not selfish. I think many times I hear a barrier to people being able to meaningfully care for themselves is that they feel that if by taking care of themselves, somehow they're not doing the teamwork or they're not showing up for that patient. They're not doing all the things they should be doing. And so I teach my youngest learners, the earliest career learners that I have, that no, self-care is number one. Because if we're able to become our own best selves and nourish ourselves, then we're going to be able to have a very long, sustainable, fulfilling career, which means that our field in pediatric palliative care will be filled with people over years, and the numbers will increase and not decrease, which is some of the worry we see in the United States, that burnout is a real problem, not only in medicine, but specifically in palliative care. We have some of the highest burnout rates compared to other subspecialties in medicine. So I oftentimes just try to reiterate over and over again that self-care is not selfish. Boundaries, to quote Dr. Hemphill, boundaries are a way for me to love you and me at the same time. And what's important about that is that the you there is a capital U. It could be our patients. It allows me to love my patients and myself at the same time. It allows me to love my partner, my friends, my family at the same time that I'm loving myself. Because at some point, our batteries become so low that by not loving ourselves and not giving that nourishment to ourselves, that the batteries won't have the opportunity to recharge. With all that being said, I think that it is self-care is a core competency that we oftentimes overlook as just another, lecture that we do in Epic Peds as a part of a checkbox. However, it has to be something that we intentionally implement within our day-to-day habits in order to continue to do this work well. Another skill set that I encourage learners to think about and to incorporate into their day-to-day practice is thinking about the art of language. Language is one of our greatest tools in pediatric palliative care, and the words we choose can be so instrumental in the support to the families that we give. Eric Cassell, one of the physicians who was one of the first people to ever write about suffering, illuminated the idea that physicians have many tools, but just like a surgeon that has a surgical knife, Clinicians that rely on our words must take it extremely seriously because words are our biggest tool. And I say this in relation to self-care and overall resiliency in palliative care because one of the things I do as a form of almost mindfulness, but also just setting intention and being able to constantly be reminded of the honor it is to be a part of this work, is I speak about my patients in a way so that I imagine the mother or the father of this patient or the patient themselves standing right in front of me. And I choose my words, whether I'm speaking about that family with my colleagues and the family is not even there, or as I write my medical notes, sometimes late at night, which is not good for self-care, or if I am in front of the family. I choose my words as if they are there, the family is there bearing witness and hearing how I speak about their child. And I think by being intentional of the words that I'm choosing and the sentences that I'm forming and ultimately the story that I have the honor to be retelling on behalf of this family is something that is precious. It's something that sometimes when we get so busy and we become so not present because of all the needs that we're bearing witness to, that we're trying to, that we're trying to get everything done in a day and we just don't have enough time, the story is something that I can remember. The story is something that keeps me grounded in this work and reminds me on a day-to-day basis of the honor it truly is to show up day-to-day and really practice palliative care. And I think words in all of the, in all of the different practices, whether it's advanced care planning, goals of care, all of the procedures that are a part of palliative care, choosing the correct words is a skill. And if you take it to the next level from a self-care perspective, it's setting an intentionality for us to continue to honor the story and honor the patients, for us to constantly be reminded that it's not just another day at work for that family like it is for me. This is one of the worst moments in a family's life that they're going to remember forever. They're going to remember the words we're using for the rest of their lives, even after their child is no longer physically on this earth. And so our words are so important. And also when we're able to constantly think about the words that we're using as our procedure, as our ability to tell that story, our colleagues will learn as well. And hopefully it'll be a reminder of the honor that it truly is to take care of these children. And I hope that that allows everyone around us, but specifically the people on our team, to be able to show up most days experiencing joy on the way to work. And importantly, that the individuals on our teams are able to reach their own highest potential in their careers. They're very, very long careers. Thank you. Bye.